Okay, so, we've got this material about Pune, and
Yeah.
it's clear right off the bat that this is not your average city.
Yeah.
It seems like there's something special about this place that we need to uncover.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these sources, we've got one set that really dives into the whole historical side, like where Pune comes from geographically and how it's grown. And then we have this other set, which is kind of like the flip side,
Hmm.
focusing on the challenges it faces as it develops and expands so rapidly.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what's so interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's that sort of uh, duality, this incredible history and culture
Yeah.
butting up against this modern dynamism. And I guess that's our mission today.
Right.
Try to weave those two together and really distill those key insights for anyone listening, you know, give them a real sense of what Pune is all about.
Absolutely. The goal is to not just scratch the surface,
Yeah.
right? We want to go deeper and hopefully connect a few dots that people might not have considered before.
Perfect. So let's start with that history, because the sources really emphasize Pune's role as like the heart of the Maratha Empire.
And it's not just that it was a capital. Pune was the seat of the Peshwas,
Right.
who were basically these incredibly powerful prime ministers,
Yeah.
running the show for the Maratha Confederacy. And that legacy, as the material hints at, is still very much alive in the city today.
Yeah, for sure.
Take Shaniwarwada, for instance. That's more than just some old palace. It's a tangible connection to this period of immense power. And if you read between the lines of the historical accounts,
Mhm.
there were some seriously pivotal and even dramatic events that played out there, shaping the entire region.
It's amazing, right? You can almost like feel the weight of those decisions.
Mhm.
Like decisions were made within those walls that had ripples across, well, the entire subcontinent.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, it doesn't just end there.
Right.
The story moves on to the British colonial period, and you see Pune kind of emerging as this hub for education and social reform.
Hmm.
And it's fascinating how these different historical layers kind of come together
Yeah,
to
exactly.
shape the Pune we see today.
Precisely. Colonial rule obviously brought its own baggage, right? Different architectural styles, institutions. But Pune didn't just become a British outpost. It held on to its core Maharashtrian identity.
Hmm.
And it kind of absorbed these new influences. And that's why you see this interesting mix today, which feeds directly into its vibrant cultural scene, all the classical music traditions, the Marathi theater, those festivals that continue to thrive. It's all part of that continuous thread.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it all blends together.
Right.
But let's talk about the geography for a second, because
Okay.
it's not just about those historical events and cultural movements,
Yeah.
right? Pune's location, right there at the foothills of the Western Ghats.
Oh, that's huge.
It seems like that really plays a big part in shaping its character.
Without a doubt. I mean, that location offers so many benefits. First, you have the obvious. This stunning natural backdrop. Imagine waking up every day to those hills. But it's more than just the visual aspect, right? That topography, that location, it creates a more moderate climate,
Oh, yeah.
which the sources describe as generally quite agreeable. And then you add in the fact that it's basically the gateway to these popular hill stations like Lonavala and Mahabaleshwar, which are known for their cooler climates and natural beauty.
It's like having an escape road to cooler air,
Absolutely.
which is never a bad thing.
No, not at all.
But speaking of climate, those documents outline those three distinct seasons:
Right.
the hot, dry summer,
Mm.
then the monsoon with all that rain, which kind of rejuvenates everything,
Yeah.
and then that mild, pleasant winter, perfect for exploring the city, apparently.
Yeah, it does paint a pretty appealing picture, doesn't it?
It does. But, while we're talking about exploring,
Sure.
we can't forget about Pune's reputation as a major education center, the whole Oxford of the East thing.
Yeah.
And that's not some new label. That's deeply ingrained in Pune's identity.
Absolutely. You've got these prestigious institutions like Savitribai Phule Pune University.
Mhm.
Not just about the sheer number of students, but the research coming out of there and the huge variety of academic programs they offer.
Right.
And then there's the historic colleges like Ferguson
Mm-hmm.
and these globally recognized names like Symbiosis International University, all contributing to this really impressive intellectual atmosphere.
You know what's really striking to me? It's a sheer density of these amazing educational and research institutions all in one place.
Yes, it creates this incredibly dynamic student population.
Yeah.
And their impact isn't just limited to classrooms and labs. These young people really contribute to the city's overall energy and cultural landscape, just like in other famous university towns around the world.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit from brains to business,
Okay.
because your sources also highlight Pune's transformation into a major economic force, especially in IT and business.
Yeah, this has been a pretty remarkable shift in Pune's recent history, wouldn't you say? The rise of those dedicated zones like Hinjawadi,
Hmm.
Karadi, Magarpata, they're practically synonymous with major tech parks and all those bustling business incubators. This growth has not only reshaped the city physically, it's attracted a huge influx of skilled workers and a ton of investment.
It's a big change from that image of a more traditional city, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
But the sources are also careful to point out that Pune's economic strength isn't just about tech. There's this whole other layer of longstanding manufacturing and small-scale industries, right?
Right, exactly. I think it's a really fascinating aspect of Pune's story, particularly when you look at India's overall economic development. You've got this cutting-edge IT sector operating alongside these more traditional manufacturing industries, producing all sorts of things, from car parts to everyday consumer goods. It really speaks to a more diverse and resilient economic base compared to some other fast-growing cities that might be overly reliant on a single sector.
So it's not putting all its eggs in one basket, so to speak,
Right, exactly.
which is always a good thing.
Yes, definitely.
So let's think about the lifestyle in Pune.
Okay.
With all this history, geography, education, industry,
Mm.
how does that actually translate to everyday life for the people who live there?
Yeah.
Your sources touch on the food scene, the arts, the overall vibe of the city.
And it's clear that there's a very diverse and vibrant cultural life in Pune. I mean, just take the food, for instance. Those classic Maharashtrian dishes like miola pav, puran poli,
Oh, yeah.
they're readily available, but you've also got this incredible range of international and fusion cuisines, reflecting that increasingly cosmopolitan population.
Makes you want to book a flight, doesn't it?
Mm,
Just for the food.
right.
But it's not just about eating.
No.
The sources make it clear that the arts are really thriving. There's this whole tradition of Marathi theater, then you've got musical performances, art galleries, and tons of cultural festivals all year round.
And when they specifically mention things like the Pune International Film Festival and all those local music festivals, it just highlights the city's energy, you know? It suggests a strong sense of community and a real appreciation for artistic expression.
Absolutely. Okay, but we can't forget about the practicalities. A city of this size, this dynamic, needs serious infrastructure, right? Good connections, all that. What do the sources say about how Pune measures up in that area?
Well, it seems like Pune benefits from pretty good connectivity overall.
Okay.
The fact that it's so close to Mumbai is a huge advantage, and having an international airport definitely makes it more accessible on a global scale.
Yeah, makes sense.
Within the city, there's a functioning public transportation system, and the fact that they're expanding the metro network suggests that they're thinking ahead, trying to anticipate the needs of a growing population.
It's good to hear about those efforts, especially that balancing act between putting in modern infrastructure while still respecting those historic neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That must be a tough but important balance to strike, especially with a past as rich as Pune's.
Definitely. And for those who want to explore, or even residents looking for a break, it seems like Pune offers a lot in terms of tourism and recreation.
Right.
We've already mentioned Shaniwar Wada with its historical significance, but there's also the Aga Khan Palace. It played a key role in India's independence movement, which is really significant. And then, of course, there's that incredibly popular Dagdushif Hawai Ganapati Temple.
So many different kinds of attractions, historical, cultural, spiritual.
Right, and we can't overlook the appeal of the natural surroundings, those easily accessible hill stations and all those opportunities for trekking in the Sayadri ranges.
That's something I'd love to do.
Right.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And those tranquil lakes and green spaces offer a real contrast
Mhm.
to the bustling city life, all just a short trip away.
Definitely. So we've spent a lot of time painting this picture of Pune as a city with an incredible past, buzzing with education and economic activity.
And good food.
Right. Great food, lively lifestyle, all set in this really appealing natural environment. But, like we mentioned at the beginning, there's another side to the story.
Yeah.
And the second set of materials you provided really digs into those urban challenges that Pune is facing. And it's just as important to understand that side of things.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of those challenges.
Okay, well, the first one that really jumps out is traffic congestion.
Right. Yeah.
It's a pretty universal problem in growing cities, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
And Pune's no exception. More and more people are buying cars, but the road networks and the traffic management systems aren't always keeping up. This leads to major bottlenecks, especially during rush hour.
Anyone who's ever been stuck in rush hour traffic knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's not just annoying. It has real consequences for productivity and the overall quality of life.
Right, it can be a real drain.
And the sources also point out that the existing infrastructure isn't always adequate. In some areas, it seems like the pace of development is outstripping the availability of essential amenities and services.
And I think it's important to recognize how interconnected these issues are.
Uh-huh.
Inadequate infrastructure contributes to traffic congestion, and they both play a role in the next challenge that the sources bring up: pollution and environmental concerns. There's a particular focus on air quality issues, which are primarily linked to vehicle emissions and industrial activity.
That's a worry I have about a lot of developing cities.
Yeah,
But it's not just the air, right?
true.
The documents also mention problems managing water resources and dealing with the increasing amount of waste as the city's population grows.
Exactly. Managing all that waste and wastewater for a growing population is a huge undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources suggest that some parts of Pune are struggling with water pollution and ensuring that waste is disposed of properly, which can have serious implications for the environment and people's health.
It's a real balancing act, isn't it?
It is. And then there's the rapid and sometimes unplanned nature of urban sprawl, which is identified as a key challenge. It's like the city's expanding outwards, but not always in a fully integrated or well thought out way.
You mean what they call fragmented urban growth, right?
Yes, exactly. You see all these new developments popping up, but essential services and infrastructure aren't always keeping pace, or they're not being distributed evenly across these new areas. This can create real disparities in living standards for residents in different parts of the city. And importantly, as the city spreads outwards, it often encroaches on those vital green spaces.
Which are so important for the environment and the overall well-being of a city.
Absolutely. And of course, all of this ties into the rising cost of living and the potential for increasing social inequalities. As demand for housing in a growing and increasingly desirable city like Pune goes up, so do property prices and rents.
Of course. And it's not just about finding any housing, it's about being able to afford decent housing.
Exactly. And what's important to think about is the impact this has on different groups of people. While some areas might be seeing all these fancy new developments with expensive housing and amenities, those sources suggest that people with lower and middle incomes are having a really hard time finding affordable options. This can lead to greater economic inequality and an uneven distribution of the benefits of the city's growth.
And it's not just housing, right? As the population grows, it puts a huge strain on things like healthcare and education. Even a city with good institutions can struggle to keep up.
Absolutely. You can end up with overcrowded schools and hospitals if the infrastructure and resources don't expand at the same rate as the population.
Yeah.
This can affect people's access to these essential services and even impact the overall quality of care.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
Right.
And then finally, those sources touch on the challenges in urban governance and civic management.
Right.
Things like delays in completing projects and just dealing with all the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Those kinds of issues can really slow down a city's ability to address all those other problems we've been talking about.
I think that's a really crucial point. You need efficient and effective governance to tackle complex urban challenges. When you have bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the administration, it just slows everything down and undermines the efforts to make things better for the residents.
So we've gone through this whole fascinating exploration, haven't we?
They have.
A city with this incredible history and culture, a dynamic modern economy, but also facing all these very real challenges that come with such rapid growth. It's a complex picture.
It is, but I think it's important to highlight that those sources do offer a bit of optimism.
Okay.
They point out that the local authorities and various community groups are actively working to understand and address these challenges. Recognizing those issues and being proactive about finding solutions is key to ensuring that Pune's future growth is sustainable and benefits everyone.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, definitely not.
There's hope. Okay, let's sum this up. Pune is obviously a city in constant motion, constantly changing, trying to find that balance between its rich traditions and the demands of a modern world.
It's a dynamic process, that's for sure.
So thinking about Pune's unique position, it's this historical powerhouse, but also this modern tech hub.
Right.
It makes you wonder how effectively its future growth can reconcile that need for technological progress with preserving its cultural identity and its natural environment.
Yeah, it raises some really fundamental questions about the nature of urban development in our times. How do cities with such deep historical roots adapt and succeed in this rapidly changing global landscape while still holding on to what makes them unique?
Yeah, it's something to really think about.
Definitely.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the multifaceted story of Pune. Thank you for sharing your sources with us.
Absolutely.
Till next time.